Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening from DOX Center for Contemporary Art in Prague and from on board the Gulliver airship. That's the space behind us. It's not a graphics, it's real space that is propped up or that sits on the rooftop of DOX, and it is a space where art meets literature. My name is Michala Šelpochova. I am the program director of DOX, and I would like to welcome you all, friends of DOX, friends of art and literature, and especially Irish literature, as this is going to be the subject of today's conversation. Therefore, sitting next to me is Ondřej Pilný, director of the Center for Irish Studies at Charles University Prague, a specialist in Irish literature, a great translator himself, and also a steering force behind this program. So welcome, Ondřej. Thank you for being here. Some great Irish writers have sailed on board this airship in the past, such as Anne Enright or John Banville. We paid tribute to Seamus Heaney, whose wonderful poem, Lightning's Eight, was read at the official inauguration of the Gulliver airship. And significantly, of course, the airship bears the name of one of the great characters in Irish literature, Gulliver, the great traveler, the explorer of faraway lands and distant territories. Here at DOX, we like to explore the links and connections and overlaps between individual artistic genres. And tonight's conversation, this program on air, is the first of a series of conversations exploring the relationship between art and literature. We are going to discuss how literature can be presented or curated in an art space with the curators of MoLI, Museum of Literature Ireland, a beautiful new addition to the Irish literary and cultural landscape. So let me welcome our three distinguished guests. Simon O'Connor, the director of MoLI. Welcome, Simon. Great to have you. Benedict Schlepper-Connolly, a digital curator of MoLI. Welcome, Benedict. And Margaret Kelleher, Chair of Anglo-Irish Literature and Drama from University College Dublin. Welcome, Margaret.
As you heard, we are streaming from a most appropriately named airship at the docks, which you can regard as our small steampunk gesture in the direction of COVID-19, which has indeed prevented us from hosting the show face-to-face with a live audience. We are delighted to be showcasing 4 Irish writers as part of this program, whose work has recently been translated into Czech, or is being translated at the moment, or who we would like to see translated very soon. They are Katrina O'Reilly, one of the most exciting poets not only of her generation, Mike McCormack, a truly original short story writer and novelist. We'll be focusing on his celebrated novel Solar Bones. Sarah Baum, a wonderful young prose writer, both of whose novels have recently appeared in Czech. And finally, Darren Ní Ghríofa, who is known primarily as an Irish and English language poet, but who also published only last year an amazing prose work, A Ghost in the Throat, an account of a young woman being fascinated or haunted by an 18th century poem of love and mourning, which is also a poignant book about motherhood. In this live program, which will take approximately 1 hour, you will hear snippets from the author's readings. And when we are finished, you can watch the complete readings introduced by their Czech translators, who also read the same extracts in the Czech language on the DOX YouTube channel. And from tomorrow, also on the website of the Center for Irish Studies, where they will be posted together with the recording of this broadcast. This is also where you'll find a list of recent translations of Irish writing into Czech. Now, before we get started, it is my pleasure to acknowledge the financial support of the Department of Foreign Affairs Ireland and especially its ESP program, without which this event could not take place. Also, the long-term and indeed cherished partnership between our center and the Embassy of Ireland in Prague. And gratitude is also due to Literature Ireland, the national agency for the promotion of contemporary Irish writing and the support of translations of Irish writing globally. And last but not least, of course, to DOX for hosting us and to the DOX technicians for keeping the show afloat. I'll now hand over back to Michaela to introduce the first part of the program, a conversation about curating literature in an art space.
Thank you. Curating literature in an art space. First of all, what do we mean by curating literature? Curating used to be a word that we only used in museums, but in recent years, or even perhaps decades, this word has been sort of plucked out of the museum context and pasted onto everything, starting with fashion and furniture to travel itineraries or restaurant menus. It seems like everything nowadays can be curated. Here in this conversation, we would like to stay within the original context of the word, its original home, the museum context. And from the Latin word curare, or to take care of, we originally understood curating as a practice that where the curators took care of museum collections. Today, curating is, let's say, understood as a independent, critically engaged, creative, and sometimes experimental exhibition-making practice. But curating literature has its own specifics, and it takes some creativity on the part of the curators if they want to aim for something more than just first folios or valuable manuscript neatly locked up in glass display boxes. But curating literature is first and foremost a wonderful opportunity, an opportunity to invite visitors to learn and to explore, to share their love of reading and stories, and to understand how much we need literature, especially in these digital times. The curators of Museum of Literature Ireland, of MoLI, have some really fresh ideas on how to curate literature. And before I start with asking some questions, let us have a look at a short video presentation of MoLI, Museum of Literature Ireland.
Welcome to MoLI, a museum of literature for the world's greatest storytellers. A partnership between University College Dublin and the National Library of Ireland, MoLI celebrates Ireland's rich literary heritage from past to present. Visit us here in our home in the historic UCD Newman House on Dublin's St. Stephen's Green. Discover new and immersive exhibitions, view literary treasures from the National Library of Ireland, enjoy our dedicated spaces for children and families, and be inspired to explore your own creativity. Be sure to go for a wander in these beautiful, tranquil gardens while you're here. And don't forget to stop for a coffee and a bite of lunch at the Commons Cafe, or to have a browse in our lovely gift shop before you go. Book your tickets at molly.ie.
We opened our doors in 2019, but the heart of this special place has been beating for centuries. Since the 1700s, the lion sitting over our door has been keeping an eye on St. Stephen's Green and all the lovers, lords and rebels who passed through it. He has watched silently as thousands of people have stepped into our home over the decades. They all leave a mark, but some more than others. Here, St. John Henry Newman helped to establish a university that would go on to educate some of our finest writers. Flann O'Brien, Mary Lavin, James Joyce. They joined the countless others who have given us one of the richest literary traditions in the world. Their words are our treasures. Words to soothe us in times of loss and uncertainty. Words to recall the joy of life. Words to give voice to the struggles of a nation.
Language is a river that flows through Irish history, and we really want visitors to MoLI to get a sense of that. You'll hear beautiful readings of Irish writing from centuries ago up to the present day, in Irish and in English. Here you see a real gem of the collection, W.B. Yeats's poem, Easter 1916. The poem was published privately in 1917 and is a lament for the signatories of the 1916 proclamation, executed for their role in the rebellion. It's hard to imagine the history of Ireland without the literature that helped to shape it, and this poem is one of the finest examples.
Here we see the messy work of creation, as Joyce seemingly filled these notebooks with every pen and crayon he had to hand, writing and rewriting, working to transform an ordinary day in Dublin into the masterpiece of Ulysses. In this case, we see the fruit of that labour, copy number 1, printed and given to Joyce in Paris on his 40th birthday, the 2nd of February, 1922. People often ask us why Ulysses deserves the attention it receives, and the simplest explanation we've come up with so far is this. In this book, Joyce shows us that every life, every day, every one of us contains the extraordinary. It's a celebration of our shared experience as human beings and a celebration of life itself.
A sense of discovery and play is vital to creativity and vital to our museum. Our current exhibition on the work of Dubliner Chris Houghton will bring some much needed delight to visitors of all ages, but it's also about celebrating something deeper. From Oscar Wilde to contemporaries such as Deirdre Sullivan, P.J. Lynch and Sarah Webb, Irish writers have introduced countless young readers to the joy of reading. Inspiring visitors to read more, write more and create more is why we're here.
The story of our home begins in the Georgian era, with the building of numbers 85 and 86 St. Stephen's Green in the 1700s. These stunning buildings would become the first home of University College Dublin. Many notable people passed through these halls as lecturers and students, perhaps most famously James Joyce, who set sections of his novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, in these buildings. We love to host weddings, ceremonies and special events in these wonderful historic rooms. And who doesn't enjoy a good love story?
Visit MoLI to find yourself surrounded by peace, beauty and inspiration. Some of that magic that helps us transform ordinary life, word by word, line by line, page by page, into something truly extraordinary. We look forward to welcoming you to our exhibitions, cafe, shop and gardens very soon. You can book your tickets, buy membership, browse our shop and explore our digital and learning programs, all at moli.ie.
So we have seen a little bit of MoLI in a video, and we have now a better idea of what the premises of MoLI look like. And I would like now to ask Simon, I guess in the beginning of MoLI there was there must have been a strong vision and then a great deal of enthusiasm to bring this vision to life. So my first question would be, how was the idea to create a new museum of literature born?
Thanks, Michaela. So that was really the idea for MoLI came about through a collaboration between University College Dublin, which is the largest university here in Ireland, and the National Library of Ireland. So the two organisations came together really to explore combining this site, this beautiful collection of buildings that we're located in, which was the original home of the university, and then the state literary collections, in particular the Joyce collections that the National Library were holding, and to really explore turning this site into a publicly accessible exhibition space that could hold some of those state treasures on display for visitors. The project developed then over a period of nearly a decade, and we opened in 2019.
Thank you. I guess you are lucky in Ireland, as there seem to be a number of museums, initiatives and foundations that pay tribute to the great Irish writers, unlike the Czech Republic, where we have relatively few. And in fact, in Ireland, some of these museums opened their doors to the public fairly recently, such as the Seamus Heaney Home Place in Bellaghy, or the Patrick Kavanagh Center in Iskeen. And these would be the examples of museums that pay tribute to the work of individual writers. Then there are museums that offer a perspective, certain perspective of Irish literature, such as, for example, the Dublin Writers' Museum, which offers a view of Irish literature from Dublin perspective. So my next question, how would you describe MoLI's focus and perspective, Benedict?
Yeah, thanks very much, Michaela. I think at MoLI, really, we take quite a wide-angled view of the art form, and it's very much also a museum that, though based in Dublin, is for the island of Ireland and beyond. I think that while we begin in terms of our genesis and in terms of our initial focus, you know, we have these wonderful treasures from the state collections, from the National Library of Ireland and other collections. We also really celebrate contemporary Irish writing in a big way, and also collaborations with other art forms. So we really see MoLI as a kind of space where there is history. I mean, we present over 800 years of Irish literature in our exhibitions and in our other programming. But we also see it as an opportunity to engage very heavily with contemporary literature and literature's association and associations with other art forms as well. And we really see then the exhibition space, as in the physical space of the museum, also being a kind of a third space, a kind of, you know, it's a space to come and explore exhibitions, but it's also a space to come and meet a friend. It's a space to come and read a book, have a cup of coffee, wander in our gardens. It goes beyond I suppose the traditional didactic role that a museum might have.
Right. We're going to speak more about your exhibitions and other programming in a minute, but now speaking about contemporary Irish writers, it's time for the first snippet of a reading by Katrina O'Reilly.
What seemed a simple structure is not so now. O house, device to conceal the obscene, end-stopped corridors sprout like horns and shut me in. Walls of hide stifle my cries, loud as pacifies, whose bull-headed baby tore her breast.
So now, Simon, you mentioned that MoLI opened in 2019, but we could say that it reopened after the COVID pandemic just last Friday. Is that correct? The premises of MoLI offer a generous 10,000 square feet of exhibition space. So how is your exhibition space structured in terms of a permanent exhibition or permanent display versus temporary exhibitions celebrating contemporary authors?
Yes, well, as you say, we combine contemporary authors as well as sort of more historical collections. As you enter into the museum, you initially get a sense of the history of this building and the site and its home as its role as the first home of University College Dublin. As you move through, you're exposed to quite a lot of diverse experiences of Irish literature from across centuries as well. And we really, I suppose, in putting together the exhibitions, really wanted to give people a very easy way in to explore many different aspects of the art form. And as such, there are many kind of different ways into discovering different authors and pieces of work. We have a couple of temporary exhibition spaces where at the moment we have a lovely exhibition about the picture book author Chris Houghton, as well as another space where we have a digital exhibition about the writer Nuala O'Fuelan and her book Are You Somebody? Moving through the collections, we have different focuses on different I suppose thematic or different trends in Irish literature, including an exhibition called State and State in the Irish Writing, which is about the development of the state in parallel with literature, as well as focuses on different genres such as young adult writing, and we'll be kind of focusing on different genres as we develop. And we also obviously have wonderful collections in the building as well. And as you move to our top floor, you would discover copy number 1 of Ulysses, which was James Joyce's very first copy of the book, as well as his notebooks. And there are other treasures in there. I mean, I could go on for another while speaking about those. So really, as you move through the exhibitions, you're given a sense of the contemporary, but also the historical. And I suppose something that underlines many parts of our exhibition is that there's a lot of audio, a lot of video, and we really wanted to, I suppose, move away from giving people a lot to read as they travel through the exhibitions, and make it as easy as possible to access the art form, access what we have in store for visitors here.
Which brings me to my next question. We mentioning an exhibition about literature or a literary work as a format is not exactly an easy task. So you have touched upon that. What would you see as the biggest challenge, and how do you approach the format of an exhibition about literature if you want to avoid the long texts and you want to make it as accessible to your audience as possible?
That's a great question, Michaela. It's a question that we ask ourselves all the time in here. In a way, we're dealing with an art form that people can purchase in a shop, and that they ordinarily experience at home themselves in private. So I think as a literature museum, we're not really in the business of presenting the art form to the visitor in the way maybe, say, a portrait gallery might be. I think what our challenge is to just encourage an interest in the art form, to recontextualize it for visitors, and then to create new routes in, as Benedict mentioned there, new routes into the art form, and for all visitors as well. So, and I think actually a key part of that is, as you had kind of hinted at earlier on, it's not the glass case exhibition of materiality or precious folios entirely, although some of that is really useful as well. It's also exploring completely new ways of talking about this art form to people, and talking about aspects of it as well, through other art forms like film, performative art practices, theatre, visual arts, music, all of it. So, I mean, Benedict kind of hinted at this as well. In a way, we sometimes try to get people to read more by giving them as little to read as possible.
Right. Thank you, Simon. You mentioned visual arts, and obviously here at DOX, visual arts is our one of our domains. So I'm interested in how you collaborate, or if you collaborate with visual artists, and what is the link between visual arts and literature at MoLI. Simon.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really long tradition within this island of literature, I suppose, acting as a source of inspiration for other art forms, and we've always felt at MoLI that it was incumbent upon us to continue that tradition and to encourage the continuation of it. So far, that's happened for us particularly through film, actually. So we've had two, I mean, very significant film commissions within MoLI. One which was what seemed like an impossible brief, which was a 15-minute short film version of Finnegan's Wake, shot all across the city using professional actors, members of the public. Really successful piece of work for children, actually, which was interesting. We had a very significant film commission with the filmmaker Alan Gilsinan, which was quite a substantial 75-minute filmic response to Ulysses as well, which was running here for the first 6 months of opening. And we continue actually to be really interested in exploring the presentation of literature through film within the museum. But I mean, we have an online exhibition at the moment in development that's looking at the Friel archives in the National Library of Ireland, but principally using dance actually as a medium, so filmed dance. And we've quite a number of theatre collaborations in development as well that will, I think, take the subject beyond the walls of the museum and out into the city.
Wow. Well, you have partly answered my next question, which was going to be about the other forms or formats and media that you use at MoLI, because when we speak about curating literature, it's not necessarily just the format of an exhibition. So, and Benedict, you mentioned digital exhibitions, and Simon now mentioned other formats. Could you say a little bit more about those? Because I know that there are many.
Yeah, I think when we were, from the very early days of MoLI, the digital component was a really, really important part, and really kind of developed in tandem with the physical museum. We really see the digital function of the museum as a kind of museum within the museum as well, and it has a kind of a life of its own within that, and interacts with the physical exhibitions in very interesting ways sometimes as well. So this has kind of manifested itself in a number of different ways. Very early on in February 2019, actually before the museum opened, we launched our own digital radio station, Radio MoLI, which has been broadcasting ever since. And that's really a lovely way to both work with a lot of different writers and artists. It's a great way to collect a lot of the activity that's happening in Ireland and around the world, and to make it available to the public. And it's a great way to engage people outside the island as well as within it, with the art form. We have other manifestations as well. For example, a number of digital film commissions. So working especially in collaboration with the Department of Foreign Affairs, we've produced a number of short films specifically for online. And then online exhibitions as well. We have one about Frederick Douglass at the moment, and a number of others in development, as Simon has mentioned just then. So I think one of the things that really interests us about that kind of digital space as well is that it can be very experimental. There's great potential for it. It really is quite infinite. So we don't necessarily have to put limitations on it from the beginning, in the way that a physical space, while it has all of these incredible attributes, values to it, in the digital space we can really kind of head off in a direction and see where it leads. And that's very exciting for us in the museum, because it gives us a possibility of exploring kind of curatorial avenues that are more difficult to explore in the physical space.
And it must be exciting for the visitors, for your audience too, I guess. Now time for hearing the next snippet from a reading by Mike McCormack.
And it must have been the same sort of unspooling, coupled with the same aptness for fantasy, that consumed my father and unravelled his mind in the last year of his life, especially during those last years when he lost his grip on the world completely and he withdrew to the old house, where there was only himself and the dog to keep each other company in those days after Ronnie's death. The long winter nights and the full weight of her absence must have come upon him with so much fear and loneliness that his grief was eclipsed completely in disbelief at the fact that his wife of over 40 years could ever leave him for any reason whatsoever, death included.
So here we are back again. Now, my next question, and you've mentioned this among all the different formats of your programming, is learning. Learning is at the core of MoLI's vision, and it is described at your website really in a beautiful way as the desire to bring visitors on an inspiring journey through Irish writing and to encourage them to explore their own creative potential. Now, Simon, can you explain in what ways can visitors explore their creative potential at MoLI?
Yeah, this is. Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. It is really actually at the core of a huge amount of the work here, and particularly actually on the learning side. I mean, the most obvious way for a lot of museums is through learning programs. So we have kind of a huge amount of work that we do, particularly focused on much younger children in the first couple of years of the institution's life, through on-site learning before COVID, and then actually the pandemic really dramatically expanded that for us into online classroom programs. And actually we've just launched on Monday this week a really significant program that's going out to schools nationally all over the country. So that's really, really exciting. In tandem with that, we run a teen writers bursary, which is a really impressive program. It's a 1 week immersive program for teenage writers, where they get exposed to major writers from all over Ireland and people from within the publishing industry, really to kind of kickstart them on their journey as to becoming an adult writer. And then within the exhibitions themselves, we have a lot of moments where visitors are encouraged to, I suppose, to explore their own creative potential, to listen to other writers talking about how they write, and to kind of demystify the process a little bit, and to say, you know, this is really about sitting down and doing the work, you know, and we've in one particular room we've magnetized a wall where people can listen to other writers, and then they can start something and they can put it up on the wall for other visitors to read. So it's actually really popular. So yeah, we have all of that going on alongside online programming for adults as well, and right the way up to we've run academic symposia while we were open, and we'll hopefully be kickstarting that again now that we're back open. And then I think a big kind of threshold for us will be the museum moving some of our learning work into adult literacy, because we feel that a museum of literature really, it shouldn't only be a place to discover writers and writing, or a place to read. It should also be a place where people can come to learn to read as well.
Wonderful. So there might be some potential, some future stars of Irish literature among your audience. And now we'll hear, let's hope so. We will hear another snippet, another short extract from a reading by one of the big names of contemporary Irish literature, and that's Sarah Baum.
We are driving, 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 over hill slopes and humpback bridges, through loose chippings and potholes wide as children's paddling pools and deep as old people's graves. Past lavender hedges, betting shops, sports grounds. Past countless closed doors behind which are countless uncaring strangers, their lives going on and on and on, relentlessly. We are heading inland, keeping to the back roads as much as possible. You are looking out the rear window where the view is best, or perching on the passenger seat with your maggot nose pressed to the air vents. What do you smell? Fox spray and honeysuckle, pine martens and stinkhorns, 7 different kinds of sap. Riding in the car is like watching a never-ending reel at a wraparound cinema, complete with the surround sound of engine putter, the piped scent of petrol fumes and passing countryside.
So all these extracts that we've heard so far, and we're going to hear one more, all these writers are part, or their books are included in this new recently launched source of learning, another source of learning that MoLI launched not long ago. It is an online platform featuring 100 Irish books published in the last decade. And here I'd like to give over to Margaret to present this platform.
Thank you, Michaela. It's a pleasure to join with MoLI colleagues this evening in our international collaboration and conversation. As you said, this is a new digital resource launched just last month. And it's a chance for us to bring the richness of Irish writing to audiences around the world, because it's a free public access website called contemporaryirishwriting.ie. And I'm very pleased that my colleague, Dr. Jennifer Preston, who has played a key role in this project, is going to give us a short demo now, a run through the project and the riches to be discovered there.
Thanks, Margaret. I'm delighted to participate in this event. The first entry I'm going to look at is the novel Milkman by Anna Burns. Milkman was published by Faber and Faber in 2018, and a Czech translation of the text was published last year. The entry opens with a quote from the author. Below this, you'll see a link which will direct you to the source from which the quote was taken. A short description of the text follows this, usually drawn from the publisher's website. The entry is then broken down into a number of categories. An excerpt of this text was available online, so we've included this in an excerpt section. We then have a section for interviews. Here you'll see the source of each interview and its title, as in this example in the Irish Times. Clicking on this link will bring you directly to this interview. Following this, we have a section for prizes and awards, with the name of each award and the year. Again, clicking on the links here will bring you to a website or an article with more information. We then have a section for reviews taken from online newspapers, magazines and blogs, an audio section featuring podcasts, radio interviews and excerpts from the text, and a video section with links to resources such as award ceremonies, author readings and interviews. The next text that I'm going to look at is Tust agus Alagar, an Irish language poetry collection by Alvin Igaravig. Published by Cushcame in 2016, Czech translations of a selection of poems from this collection are forthcoming. Again, the entry opens with a quote from the author. In this instance, the quote is in the Irish language, so we've provided an English language translation below this. This is followed by a description of the text, also provided in Irish, with an English language translation. We then have our interview section and a section for prizes and awards, a review section from Irish language newspapers, magazines and blogs, and a section for audio resources and video resources, some of which are in English and some of which are in Irish. At the end of each entry, we've included a resources for readers section, where we've added any additional resources that we feel may be of use to readers, such as author profiles or biographies and related articles. At the top of the page, you'll see a number of tags. Clicking on these tags will show you a selection of texts from within the same genre, and you can also use the tags to filter your searches on the website. The final entry that I'm going to look at is Solar Bones by Mike McCormack, whose work features this evening. Solar Bones was published by Tramp Press in 2016. Again, the entry opens with a quote from the author himself and is followed by a description of the text. A preview of this text was available on Google Books, so we've included that in the excerpt section. We then have our interview section with resources such as this interview with the stinging fly, our prizes and awards section showcasing the many honours associated with this text, such as the International Dublin Literary Award, and our reviews section and our audio section. This entry has a wide range of material in its video section, ranging from author readings, such as this one in Kenny's Bookshop in Galway, to a lecture given by the author in Villanova University in the United States. And this demonstrates the variety of resources even within the entries themselves. That's just a brief overview of some of the resources on contemporaryirishwriting.ie. Now I'll hand back over to Margaret.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. This was a really wonderful demonstration of the kinds of things that you can find on this online platform. And I'll turn to Margaret now to ask a little bit about the background of the project. How did it come about?
Thanks, Andre. I have to say you and I have sailed together in a number of ships in Irish literature before, but this has to be the most impressive, and it's a real pleasure to speak with you in this event. Yeah, the project had 2 generations behind its formation. In 2016, with colleagues in the School of English, Drama and Film at UCD, we chose 50 books that we felt represented an important area of Irish writing. But this new resource took that project and added 2 crucial dimensions. We became a list of 100 writers, but also through the work of the colleagues you've met this evening and MoLI, through in particular Benedict and the digital curation team, we were able to launch a much more ambitious vision for the project, which is now delivered in this website. So that has enabled us to choose 100 texts by 98 different writers. We made an important decision that each author would be featured by just 1 text, with 2 important exceptions, Deireadh ní Ghríofa and Eilish ní Ghuimhne, whom, as their names suggest, write in both languages, and we felt that that allowed them the opportunity to be doubly represented.
Thank you. I think that creating such a platform is a bit like editing an anthology, and anyone who's ever done that will know about the perils of this involved in excluding people, etc. So can you talk a little bit about what the criteria were for inclusion, because no anthology can be all comprehensive. That's naturally clear.
That's so true, and for us this is a snapshot of the diversity and vitality of contemporary Irish writing, which is itself a sort of kaleidoscope, and that seems like the correct metaphor for our light-filled rooms this evening. So as you say, the task of selection is a difficult one, and therefore it's important for us that the resource is also a way to encounter not just these 100 texts, but the many others through the various links that Jennifer has just explained. By beginning with 1 text and moving to the videos or to the reviews, I think one is brought in turn on a much longer journey, and on that journey one will discover other writers. But to come back to your criteria of inclusion, 2 key words for us were diversity and range, and therefore over the 100 texts we're seeking to include a range of genres, a range of generations of writers, and also indeed a range of languages. We're very proud of the Irish language representation on the website. And also for us, you may have noticed that our subtitle, so to speak, is Books That Changed a Nation. And all of the 100 books have done that in different ways. Sometimes that's through their content, sometimes it's through their form. Mike McCormick's gloriously unfinished sentence, for example, or Deireadh ní Ghríofa's really genre-breaking work throughout her writings. But also there may be sadder reasons why the book is an event. So for example, we include Human Chain, Seamus Heaney's last published collection of poetry, and more recently, alas, the last published collection by Van Boland, The Historians, which was published posthumously. So those 2 books, Andre, for very sad reasons, are themselves key events and milestones in Irish publishing history. Perhaps less sadly, we also have book as an event because we have the first book published by a number of writers. For example, Michelle Gallen, a very vibrant, exciting young Northern Irish writer, is featured in her first novel.
Thank you very much. And now, particularly through the work on this compendium, this kaleidoscope of contemporary writing, could you tell us a little bit about what you think are the most striking changes or features of the contemporary literary scene in Ireland?
That's a great question, and it's interesting to note that for the selections that we featured for the last 2 years, we invited the members of MoLI to participate by making nominations to us to guide us in our selection. And from their nominations in particular, I think we could see one key trend, which is the growing importance in contemporary Irish writing of memoir and of other forms of non-fiction. There's a way in which, through the hundreds of years of writing, which Benedict mentioned earlier, that are featured in MoLI, there's a way in which Irish writing has always been distinguished by that sense of experimentation, by breaking genres, by creating new genres. And it's been great to see that happen in new ways in recent years through memoir and biography and autobiographical writing. So I'm thinking, of course, of the wonderful work of Emily Pine, my colleague at UCD, but also more recent work by Patrick Frayne, by Óndamh Radoon, a young traveller male writer, whose writings are really hard to classify by genre. They're stories, they're folk tales, they're heritage stories, and they're all the more compelling because of that difficulty of pinning them down. But could I, Henri, in a way, turn that question back to you as a teacher yourself of Irish literature, and what have you noticed in recent years?
Well, first of all, I have to say that there's a sheer amount of it. And okay, Ireland has always had an extraordinary number of successful writers per capita, but now it just seems like a complete explosion, and it's even for a specialist, it's really, really hard to keep up with the new developments. It's particularly fascinating to watch, I suppose for anyone, not just for specialists, to watch the developments in Irish writing over the last, say, 20, 30 years, because they have a lot of changes to reflect in terms of Irish society and Irish culture. You can start with the rapid and unexpected boom of the Irish economy and then its sudden demise. Think about the rapid globalization of Ireland, ethnic diversification of a society which a bit like the Czech society used to be pretty much all white. The dismantling of the dominant political and social influence of the Catholic Church, and also of the monolithic discourse of Irish identity and nationalism. And I think that this is reflected in the writing. It's very hard to generalize, and you know that I hate to do that, but I'll just venture perhaps just one generalization, and that is that I think there has been generally a move away from the national narrative in Irish writing and the image of Ireland as a post-colonial country towards a focus on marginalized groups and individuals, women, the LGBTQ community, the elderly, the non-white people living in Ireland, and generally on the experience of those people who have been oppressed, in any kind of way or cast out by society. It's fascinating also to watch the new ways of developing the rich tradition of Irish medieval writing and of the oral tradition, and how that helps, perhaps paradoxically, to continue and develop the great legacy of Irish modernism represented by Joyce and Flann O'Brien and Samuel Beckett. It's also wonderful to see the richness of Irish language writing, and also the increased communication between Irish language writers and English language writers in Ireland, and also scholars, very important. And I think, yes, indeed, our next writer in our next video is a bilingual one, so that can be a demonstration. So here's a snippet from a reading by Darren Griffith.
When we first met, I was a child, and she had been dead for centuries. Look, I am 11, a girl who is terrible at sums and at sports, a girl given to staring out windows, a girl whose only real gift lies in daydreaming. The teacher snaps my name, startling me back to the flimsy prefab. Her voice makes it a fine day in 1773 and sets English soldiers crouching in ambush. I add ditch water to drench their knees. Their muskets point towards a young man who is tumbling from his saddle now in slow, slow motion. A woman rides in to kneel over him, her voice rising in an antique formula of breath and syllable the teacher calls a queena, a keen to lament the dead.
That's a truly wonderful book, I have to say, and I'm so glad that it is currently, as we speak, being translated into the Czech language. I have another question for you, Margaret, and that is how the users of contemporary Irish writing.ie can keep informed about the new writers emerging in Ireland.
That's a key issue for us, and it relates very well, Andre, to what you've just commented upon yourself in relation to, some of the key forces in contemporary Irish writing. It's a particular pleasure to see new voices emerging exactly from the communities you mentioned, that have been included. So one writer who comes very strongly to mind, for example, is Malate Uche Akore, who writes about the contemporary scandal that is direct provision in contemporary Irish society. But it's also important that we keep abreast of writers that in a way we haven't heard of already. So one of the ways we've done that, actually even in the week since the launch of the programme, is we've added a feature to the platform already whereby users can receive information as to the various literary journals that are operating in the Irish scene. And working with colleagues in MoLI here to put that list together, I think we were all delighted, even startled to see how long a list it is. And again, it's clear that those writers have played a key part in shaping reputations. I'm thinking in particular of The Stinging Fly, which has played a key part in fostering the early career of Daniel McLaughlin, Mike McCormack, Kevin Barry, just to name a few. I'm thinking also of the importance of the Dublin Review and its role in fostering non-fiction writers, also the role of new arrivals like Ancapel Durica that are playing a really important role. So they, I think, Andre, will be the bridges for us all in the future, bridges that will enable writers to be published for the first time and then, I suppose, move through the stages of publication that will bring them into the world of our syllabi as university teachers, but crucially into the life of readers. I mean, this evening, I suppose, above all, we're celebrating international readership. And one of our great hopes for this site is that the Czech audience here will discover new delights in Irish writing. You've heard 4 wonderful voices already, and our platform is providing dozens of others.
I was so grateful to see that you've actually added the journals to the resource recently, because I mean, the contrast couldn't be greater. If you think about the time when in Ireland, the Bell was pretty much the only platform available to young and upcoming writers, the contrast just couldn't be greater. And it is fabulous, particularly at a time when we all know how difficult it is to actually sustain and run a journal in any sort of feasible way. So we're extremely grateful, and of course for an international audience it is just absolutely impossible to follow the new developments, what the journals are and what is happening in those. My last question to you, Margaret, is what you hope will be the lasting significance of the digital platform?
I think in a way this evening's event already answers that, Andre, that our hope always with this website was to bring Irish writing to new audiences. It's been a pleasure already in the last few weeks to see the amount of engagement with the site, and that includes, for example, members of book clubs, as well as individual readers and many university students. But I think tonight, and the sport indeed of the Department of Foreign Affairs, probably reminds me of maybe one of the most fundamental objectives of the website is to allow Irish literature to travel, so that we in MoLI and also in UCD can be ambassadors for that, and to really be mediators and brokers in the best sense of the word in introducing readers and audiences to these just wonderful, very brave and very resilient artists.
Thank you very much. I have to say that I suppose I'm speaking on behalf of the entire international community of readers to express our gratitude to your work and to the work of MoLI in promoting Irish literature. Our time is nearly up, so I would like to first of all thank to all participants in this program, and in particular to Simon O'Connor and Benedict Schlepper-Connolly from MoLI, and to Margaret Kelleher from UCD. Also to our 4 featured authors and the translators. And I'd like to remind our spectators that now they can watch the complete videos of the readings with Czech translations if they're interested, and that these are going to be posted together with the recording of this stream on the DOX YouTube channel and also on the website of the Center for Irish Studies. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank DOX and Michaela Shilpochova for hosting us with this event.
Thank you, Andrei. Just one last sentence. I would like to wish MoLI all the best of luck and many visitors and many new talents, and good luck with your wonderful work you're doing. Thank you, Andrei, for co-hosting this event. And I would also like to thank everybody who was watching us tonight, and hopefully we will all meet soon here on board the Gulliver airship in Prague. So thank you everyone, and have a good evening.